Hello there. Well, this time we get to look at a really beautiful weapon, and I have to apologize up front because I will be mispronouncing several terms in this video. This is a very distinctive Indian dagger called a Khanjarli. Again, terrible pronunciation. But you have to be careful because it is not a khanjali, nor is it a khanjar, both of which come up in search results much more often than this one does. This is an 18th century innovation. It's basically a variation of the Indian chilanum. So if you look that up, you'll see that they're similar, but this one's more distinctive. It's more artistic, really. Surviving examples tend towards the ornate but functional, like this one. Highly decorated, but definitely meant for serious use. You can probably guess what the most distinctive part of this is. Its calling card is, of course, the handle and specifically the pommel. Right? You see that widening mushroom shape? That's definitely what sets this apart from just about any other dagger. It's really cool looking. It's meant to give you secure grip, but I think it's as artistic as anything else in intent. The handle is basically a sandwich. There's two plates of whatever material, usually wood or ivory, and they're held together by those rivets. So we can see four here, two on the pommel, pretty, workmanlike, and then two on the handle that are highly decorated. I talked a second ago about how this is, beautiful but functional, and generally seems to be that way as a weapon. And here's an example of that. Look at these strong ridges. See that normally, a dagger might have a central spine like this one does, and that's going to give it a lot more strength. So you don't do that just for the fun of it. And you can see how many ridges this one has. And it also has kind of that bulwark there at the hilt. That's not necessarily always there on daggers by any stretch. So this thing is a very strong blade, and it's meant to survive, powerful thrust into armor, probably mail or chainmail, whatever you want to call it. The idea here is this thing is meant to survive some pretty rough use, despite the high degree of decoration. Back to the handle, here you can see the ivory, and as I mentioned, that was one of the two most common materials used, and this was developed, we're told, this was developed by the Marathas. They were an important military empire from eastern India, and it was developed by them associated with a region called Orissa, if I've said either of those things correctly, and that region was known for its ivory work, right, the quality of its ivory work. So there you go, in terms of it being a common material for this guy. As long as we're here, we might as well focus on those two rivets. You can see the floral design there, and that was really common with Indo-Persian weapons. Nice touch, and look at the degree of detail there. So this particular specimen here was definitely not a poor man's weapon by any stretch. Let's move to a different view here, and you can see the guard, and it's serious business, right? That's meant to provide your hand with definite protection. It's not just decorative. It's a big steel plate, goes pretty wide, and you can see that it transitions to a knuckle duster kind of guard. That's usually the case on these, but not always. I mean, I don't think it has to have one, but it very often does. And this one's gorgeous. I don't have a good enough picture of it, but that knuckle duster, is in the form of like a serpent or an animal head. Another thing we can focus on in this view is the transition of the blade. Notice how a cutting edge starts to emerge, two edges, right, on both sides. Cutting edge starts to emerge just as the ridges start to coalesce down the center. So this is a complex design. A lot of thought went into this, and it's providing strength for that kind of spear thrust we were talking about, while also letting a slicing edge emerge. Now you'll notice something odd when it comes to the point here, the last, say, third. It's actually thicker than the part that precedes it on the blade, and that's just not normal. It's something you'll see in India with other dagger types like the Khanjar, and this happens when it's specifically designed as an armor-piercing point, right? It's got to have that extra mass to be able to survive, the strike. So what you've got is a long, tapering, slender striking point, right? So it comes down to a very thin, fine point so it can find a gap in armor, force its way through, and then kind of rend, the impediments apart as it drives through, right? So a really wide blade wouldn't work well for that, or one that tapers very abruptly. And here's a great view of the blade itself. They almost always had these recurved blades. A curved blade would just curve in one direction. This is called a recurved blade. It's really beautiful, of course. I think it neither impedes nor enhances the function of the knife, but that's just me. Lastly, I should mention that high-quality steel, iron/steel, was often used with these, because as you can tell, this is a pride of ownership type weapon. We talked about how it's highly functional, so you want quality steel, and these often featured watered steel. It's also called woots, and you know it when you see it, and you see that wavy pattern in the metal. That's not just for show. I'm not going to get into the details, but it's, it's a sign of a high level of craftsmanship. Overall, I'd say if you're looking for a weapon the world over that is beautiful and deadly, really hits that nexus, you would have trouble finding one better than the Khanjarli. I hope that was fairly informative and at least mostly accurate, so thanks a lot.